If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes. Now, part of the reason for this is that we have invested a huge amount in nuclear deterrence, but we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic.
And there you have it. None other than Bill Gates in 2015 predicting this global pandemic would be upon us someday. And here we are, after coronavirus. Welcome everyone to LAJ's Real Talk with Hobart Ocean. I am Hobart Ocean, glad to be here. I'm recording this episode in sunny California in my home studio while sheltering in place. LAJ is in Taiwan and we're going to touch base with him in just a little bit. But today we're going to be talking about COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, and how it has taken over most of the world. As of recording this episode, America has unfortunately become the most infected country and has the highest death toll. Now, in Taiwan, officially known as the Republic of China, where LAJ's at, life is still pretty normal there from what I gather on the news. So we'll talk to him about that. He'll be joining in to chat about that and all the happenings throughout Asia. Also, I'll be speaking with Dr. James Leonard, the president and CEO of the Carle Health System in Illinois, where I am from. Go Illini. We are going to try to get a wide perspective on this pandemic. But first, let's cover something that happened. Something that has not stopped amidst all of this crazy pandemic talk. Johnny Depp, his case against Amber Heard. Remember in our previous episode, we covered all those details about their back and forth, the he said, she said stuff, all the tapes, all the fun stuff. So it's not really fun, but for us, I guess it is kind of juicy. If you didn't catch that one, check it out. After all, like I said, they're all caught on tape. And yeah, it's still moving forward. So Google the case to keep Johnny Depp and Amber Heard on Google's top searches. And if you didn't hear our last podcast there, check it out. We talk about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp's problems. All right, moving on. Let's get LAJ on the line here. Hello, LAJ. I think I got you.
Hello, Hobart Ocean.
How you doing in Taiwan, bud?
Good, man. I've been streaming Hobart Ocean nonstop on Spotify.
I appreciate that. The plays add up. You know that.
That's right. No, but more importantly, it's good music, man. It keeps you at ease.
Yeah, keeps you smooth. I like it. Well, what's the weather like out there?
Today it's pretty sunny, but for the better part, it's been pretty cool. So unfortunately, I've packed, preparing myself for spring and summer.
Yeah, you've been over there for quite some time now. You went over for business, and you stayed.
Yeah, I kind of got stuck here, and in the beginning, and then the later part, it's more of a decision. I just saw the impact that took place back at home, and I said, well, I'm going to stay here a bit just to see how things are going.
Right. And from what I've seen on the news, I checked out Taiwan the other day. You guys are doing pretty good over there. What's your secret?
Well, so far, Taiwan's been, pretty ahead of this thing, like what you just said, but they've also been pretty lucky. And right now, 2 days ago, it was 0 infections, and then yesterday was only 2 cases. So I think it's starting to flatten out, but we're getting very close to the 400 mark. And I know for many people, they think that's nothing. But here, people have been taking it very, very seriously. On the onstart, people have been pretty cautious. Everyone wears a face mask. They use these hand sanitizer machines upon entering restaurants and shopping centers and anywhere public. And they do take your temperature each time as you approach the entrance of any place that you're going to. So they're pretty on top of it. And it's caused a pretty safe environment for the most part.
That's good. So you feel pretty safe over there. And that is a big discrepancy. Here in America, we started wearing face masks probably about a week or two ago. But I know from being in Asia, that's commonplace. And they look at us like we're crazy over here not wearing face masks.
That's right. And on that note, I want to point out that because, I'm sure many people have witnessed on both continents, there are a lot of incidents surrounding face masks. One of it is the availability of being able to buy face masks. And Taiwan took the initiative early on to not allow anyone to ship out face masks. So if I were to buy face masks for you here, I wouldn't be able to mail it to you. They just don't allow it because they've started to control the whole inventory, the whole system to protect their own people. Now, that's really questionable whether, a government should do that, I guess. But so far, it's worked wonders for them versus many of the other more democratic countries around the world. Now, with that, there's also the other issue, which is, people looking upon others and possibly in some ways deciding to prejudice on the factor of whether or not somebody wears their face mask or not. And in Asia, believe it or not, most Asians view Westerners in a whole different light. They look at them as if they are the virus when in the beginning, the onset of this, when they didn't wear a face mask. And I've also saw online that many instances happened to Asians in America in reverse, where Asians wore face masks and, they were viewed as if they had a serious illness or something.
Right. That's a huge discrepancy here now. If you don't wear a face mask here, now we are much like how the Asian countries used to be. So if you don't wear a face mask now, yeah, boy, you are in trouble. But I totally get it. Yeah, everybody must be looking at, people like me, Caucasians from America walking around with no face mask like we're crazy over there.
Well, in general, I would also highlight that Caucasians also stand out based on their height and build for most of them. For the ones who are not tall enough and well built, shame on you for not being healthy, because you're really not representing there.
Exactly. Well, how are the other countries in Asia doing? I know we just talked about Taiwan a little bit. What else do you know about Singapore and China and Japan, Korea?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of different incidents going on at the moment. So really quickly on China. So as the public data, obviously, that we can all see is that, their total cases at this point is about 80-some thousand. They have 3,000-some deaths. And the world doesn't really have the data of how many people they tested or not tested. And we see the recovery rate. But regardless of all that aside, they've taken a pretty aggressive effort in, reassuring that there's not a second outbreak. So they have a systematic approach where they issue different colors identifying whether you pass the test or not, as far as whether you're safe to board public transportation and to participate, in going to public areas. And they do obviously disinfect like crazy. They have robots, just on public streets spraying all over the place, which I think is pretty advanced and pretty cool in some parts. And when you look at Korea now, Korea's actually passed 10,000 cases. And, they're one of the Asian nations that have actually taken the precaution for same day or actually within the hour testing. And so I thought that was pretty impressive. America has also jumped on that. And I think in America, you guys are testing more than 100,000 people a day, which is also, very impressive. But unfortunately, Korea's death toll, I think, has passed 200. People believe they've passed the curve. It's doing better now, but they're still being very cautious about it.
Right.
And in Korea, the example is religious gatherings. I know that's a very touchy subject, but that's kind of what happened to them. They had a gathering, and one person got it, and next thing you know, everybody got it, and the spread was just very drastic. Now, Hong Kong is another example that I think has done pretty well based on death toll rates. They've kept it at, I think it's 4 at the moment, but they have over 1,000 cases. Now, that's probably nothing compared to California, but Hong Kong, we have to keep in mind, it's very, very small region. And I guess from their experience with SARS, they've actually done very well this time. They've made an effort to get ahead, but unfortunately, they've had trouble trying to close off people coming over from the mainland. Now, the other instant, I know we talked about Singapore. Singapore, not too long ago, has decided to shut its country down, meaning that, the stay-at-home order, just like America, everybody's working from home, and they're not really allowed to go out for non-essential things. And so they're hoping to really, lock down the total cases, but it's still going. Right now, Singapore has kind of blown up. It's just passed about 3,600 something, going very close to 3,700. And by the finish of this episode, it's probably going to get much higher.
So what do you think we do from here? How do we flatten the curve, as they say?
Well, I'm obviously not a doctor, and I'm not a specialist, and honestly, any advice I give can go both ways. But personal experience, I've traveled, and I've actually still traveled during this time, and remain perfectly healthy. I have no fever. Every now and then I get these small symptoms, but I've recovered fairly quickly and have never had any of the symptoms that are publicly identified. Now, what I would say to your question is, like recently, when I went to Guam, a territory of the U.S., a very beautiful place, and what I've noticed is that Guam, and this is back in March, Guam allowed people to, still go in and, just life is normal there. And I bumped into a lot of Korean and Japanese tourists, and none of which wore face masks. And I've also bumped into a lot of American tourists too, none of which wore face masks.
Of course.
Now, I obviously, being very cautious and want to survive this, I wore face masks the whole time. And the only people that wore face masks there were the salespeople, the staff. But when I went to restaurants, most of the restaurants didn't have it. The people that actually wore it were all at department stores. But when I left Guam, immediately Guam had 3 cases confirmed, and then now it's obviously gotten up a lot higher than that. So with that said, that takeaway right there, I've learned that face masks are obviously very valuable, a very valuable commodity at this point. And beyond that, I think, like what you constantly remind people is washing their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keeping a good social distance is obviously good, as Dr. Fauci has said many times over, on all major U.S. broadcasts. But beyond those, I think what's more important is to just be careful. A good example is that when you go to a restaurant, and if you decide that if you still can't eat out, I know in America you probably can't, but in some countries that aren't under total lockdown, you might want to just play it smart, take it home. Just avoid, the opportunity to take off that mask and get infected.
Exactly. It's common sense, yeah.
Yeah, and cover your cough and all those things. But that's really how Taiwan was able to get ahead of this, was everybody cared so much about their own life and survival that it really took it to the most serious stage that they can. And that's one thing Fauci stressed about, which is, you do want to think of it as the end of the world, so the world actually doesn't end. Those aren't actually his words, but that's my definition of what he was correlating there.
That's pretty dark. I like that. You should write that down. I'll put that in my next screenplay.
Yeah. But so for the most part, I think Asia is recovering. There's still a lot of areas that are still trying to figure this out. Taiwan has played a good defensive role, although I do fear that if at any point it becomes a community spread in Taiwan, rather it could get pretty serious because, most people have never been infected with this, and their bodies are not immune, and they haven't developed any combating system in place. And so I think that might be a real challenge, and it might really take up, their ability to help people here, because the population really is much greater than the resources that they have.
Well, that's really fascinating stuff, and you're getting into a subject that I'm going to cover here. Next, I'm actually going to have Dr. James Leonard from Carle Foundation out in Illinois. Yeah, I'm going to have him on here in a little bit, and we're going to talk about that, hopefully, about the herd immunity that Asians may have and Californians may have. And yeah, kind of just touch on what you're talking about, where people don't have that immunity because of social distancing. We're going to get into it. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, nice. I mean, yeah, you can't go wrong with Dr. Leonard. I mean, he's an amazing guy, and he's done wonderful things. I believe I think he's still in the Midwest over there, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty tough for him out there.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, that's where I'm from, so that's why we're calling. And we're getting, I mean, this is a great show today. We're getting the Asian, kind of view on things over there, since you're representing for us right there. I'm representing the West Coast here in California to talk about that, and now, we'll get the Midwest.
Speaking about that, how is the West Coast doing right now? I mean, how's everybody doing in LA?
Well, LA, for those of you who don't know, is already crazy. So people are already nuts here. If you move to California, it's just weirdos. And so you got to get used to that. But now with a pandemic, everybody is absolutely crazy. But the good thing is most of us are staying home. And so we don't have to deal with each other for another month or so here. The grocery stores are the biggest problem we have, because all of us really have to go out about once every 2 weeks to get the refill on the groceries, because Amazon isn't delivering, or Whole Foods. They don't deliver on time. That's the problem that I've come into.
Now, are people wearing face masks at these local grocery stores?
Everybody and their mother and their grandmother is wearing face masks and towels around their head. All sorts of crazy stuff that Californians would do. They're even bedazzling face masks now and selling them. So we've got some interesting things going on. But if you don't wear a face mask, I'm afraid you're going to get beat up.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's always been kind of the energy out in Asia. So I'm glad that, America's taken these, precautions. It really will be helpful in the long run.
Right. So everybody's playing ball here for now, at least. I think everybody's behaving for the most part here in California. I don't know how long it will last, but we're doing it.
Now, how are you able to buy things at the grocery stores or online, such as sanitizers or toilet paper, essential things for survival?
So what I'm running into is, there's no hand sanitizers, but there is hand soap. So the sanitizers have been gone online and in stores for a couple of weeks. The food is easy for me because my diet, like I eat really clean and healthy, and nobody wants ground turkey and eggs and stuff. Everybody wants Pop-Tarts and cereal, and I'm, an exercise guy, so I'm good, but everybody else is struggling.
Okay, so this is like the best time to get healthy, to get lean and mean.
I'm telling you, it's been great. This Corona has given me a six-pack. And I'm not talking about the beer. I'm talking about the coronavirus keeping me inside just working out.
How's the beer selling, by the way?
How's the what?
The Corona beer selling these days.
Oh, gosh, that's a sad story. I'm glad you brought that up. People who are listening, Corona beer, if you drink it, it's okay. It doesn't have coronavirus. It's a different company. It's actually made in Chicago.
Oh, my gosh, poor guys.
Yeah, so I don't even know how their stock's doing, but I saw a report that people weren't buying Corona beer because of that.
Oh, yeah. I hope everyone recovers. I know the government in the U.S. has a lot of measures that they're helping with local businesses and people. I think they're doing, some funding to get you guys back on your feet. Have you received any money yet or any help?
I have not received any money nor help because I don't do the direct deposit with the government when I pay taxes. And so I have to wait on a check in the mail for $1,200. But I'm okay because I've been working from home. I do voiceovers, you know me. I do the screenplays. I do the music. My life has been
different. Yeah,
it's different. It's different, that I can't actually go do the projects and play the live shows that I normally do, but I'm still able to make a name for myself and make an income that most people can't from home.
Well, that's good. I mean, anything that keeps you, active and moving along with your life, I think is always a healthy thing. And I think that's one important thing that the viewers should know, that that we're all going to survive this at some point.
Right. We don't know what the other side is going to look like, but we're all going to get through this. The sun will rise tomorrow, just like he said in Castaway, old Tom Hanks.
Well, worst case scenario is that Asians will take over the world. And that might or might not be good, depending on if you like Asian food.
I love Panda Express.
Oh, it's not going to taste just like Panda, though.
Oh, bummer. That's too bad. All right. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by today and taking the time out of your busy schedule out in Taiwan, man. This has been fantastic hearing your side of things.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for, bringing me in on this. And I'm glad you took over the show, and have fun with it, do some damage, and have a good conversation with Dr. Leonard there.
I will. I'll tell him you said what's up, and then when you get back, we'll have a push-up contest.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Be safe.
Okay, next on the line, I've got a very special surprise for everybody. I've got Dr. James Leonard, the president and CEO of the Carle Health System over in Illinois. Dr. Leonard, how are you today?
I'm excellent, Hobart. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, well, thanks for coming on today. I wanted to shed a little bit of light on the COVID-19 pandemic in the Midwest, where I am from, in Illinois. So it's a pleasure to have you on today. For the listeners, can you go ahead and brag about yourself a little bit? I know everything about you, but tell the listeners just a little bit of your professional, I don't know what you'd call it, your professional accolades.
Sure. I'd be happy to expand a little bit. So I'm a family practitioner by training and board certification. I happen to be a CEO of the Carle System, as you mentioned. Have done a number of different things during my career, including on a national level, being a part of the American Hospital Association Board of Trustees up until a couple of years ago. I have been intimately involved in starting a new college of medicine here in Illinois with our engineering school at the University of Illinois, the first of its kind. Everybody that gets in has a engineering degree, mathematics, or some type of computational background. So anyhow, it's been a lot of fun doing a lot of different things.
That sounds awesome. I remember reading a story about you were working closely with the engineering campus to actually try and make some MacGyver respirators, as I heard they were called, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. So we had a meeting on March 12th. I remember because it was one of our board meetings, and the Dean of Engineering was there. And we were talking about the coming challenge. Illinois was still sort of at the front door of things. And he said, interesting problems. And I said, you could be very helpful. Here are the things that we believe that we will need and are short of. The first was ventilators, and then we talked about the PPE that's been in the press so much, personal protective equipment, and challenged him, could he go back to the engineering school and come back with devices. Within 10 days, I had a phone call that they had reverse engineered a ventilator that could be made for $100 when they're usually tens of thousands of dollars. And it's not as sophisticated as the ones that typically are used, but for 60 to 70% of the patients could be a godsend.
Oh, that's amazing.
Meanwhile, what's that?
I said that's amazing. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just flabbergasted. That's awesome. That's so cheap.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And so not only could it be a great intervention for us here in Illinois or the United States, but as we look at the spread of the pandemic into South America or Africa, there's going to be a huge need for ventilators that don't exist today. So over the next few months, this could be a game changer for the entire world.
Well, that'll be excellent. I'll make sure to update everybody if those respirators get out to the world. And I know we have a lot of listeners in Asia, so that would be very interesting to follow up at some point if that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And because of the nature of this and how we put it together with the engineering school, they have open sourced the plans as well. So people would be able to download that and potentially use it. The other exciting thing is some of the listeners may have access to 3D printers, and there's been some interesting work done around the personal protective equipment as well to help answer the need for masks, different face shields, etc. So a lot of exciting things that came from that March 12th meeting.
Well, it's really cool that everybody's banding together over there and representing well at Carle. I do have a question for you. Overall, how is Illinois handling this pandemic of COVID-19?
That's a really good question, Hobart. When you look at the response, it's really varies sort of country by country around the world, and the United States has picked a certain trajectory of what they're going to do. And I'd say that Illinois really is sort of right in the middle in terms of how they're managing things. They've done a lot around social distancing. They found that they were really way behind in public health and the infrastructure, and so they've spent the last few weeks trying to put that back together to make sure that there's a lot of testing available, and have really followed sort of the basic blocking and tackling. When you look at the state of Illinois itself, it's been about 24,000 identified cases of people who are positive, realizing there's a lot more than that. That's just with testing. Most of them in the Chicago area, which follows the pattern that we've seen in the United States of areas of high population, high density, having more cases, more deaths, more problems, if you will. And so for those listeners who may not be aware, there's Chicago, which is most people are aware of, and a very high-density population, and then the rest of the state, which is more rural and semi-rural.
Now, did you see any patterns in Chicago with the development of the disease that was their hotspot areas?
So that's been interesting as this has developed and is being seen elsewhere in the United States as well. Some of your listeners may be aware that in healthcare, we've been following social determinants very closely the last few years. And by social determinants, we mean the things in people's lives that may predispose them to have disease or to have a shorter life expectancy. And so the very first thing that you find is poverty. You then see that oftentimes attached to chronic diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity. All of those things have proven to be risk factors and show up in the hot spots that you see in the city areas, whether it's New York or whether it's Chicago. And of course, that then means that you see hot spots that follow some of the mass transit lines. All of it starts to come together. Again, it's not a perfect correlation, but it's a very high correlation.
That's a really interesting idea. So you're talking about maybe the L, the train that runs through Chicago. For people who don't know what that is, it's the elevated train system. People are suggesting now that possibly because everybody's on top of each other while they ride in the cars, that they may be spreading the disease that way.
Exactly, which is then consistent with some of the other things that you see of hot spots, whether it's New Orleans, where they had Mardi Gras and large groups of people getting together, whether it was the spring break festivities in Florida, where a lot of young people were together, real patterns.
Yeah, I know. I don't mean to laugh at the Florida one, but I just remember seeing all the social media about that, and all these knuckleheads were together on the beach down in Panama enjoying themselves, and we all knew that was going to be a problem. It
has been.
Yeah. So tell me, what's different about this disease? Why is this all over the news versus, I remember SARS and H1N1, avian flu, all those. What's different about this one that's scaring so many people?
Yeah, that too is a really good question and a differentiator for this whole pandemic, if you will. You really, in my mind, have to look back more towards the 1950s when we were fighting polio, and there were outbreaks every year, and people were frightened, and again, were social distancing, wouldn't go to the local swimming pools and things. And until the polio vaccine came out, it really was a pandemic it occurred every year with really no solutions. And when you look at SARS and H1N1 and our recent outbreak of the measles and the Zika virus and Ebola, we continue to be challenged with these viruses. But what makes this so different is that A, it was unknown, B, there's no known treatment. C, it doesn't appear to be seasonal. We're not 100% sure yet, but some of these other ones, as it gets warmer, the droplets don't spread as easy and they burn out. But so you have sort of a perfect storm where unexpected, we're not aware of the infection rate, how infectious is it, and the mortality rates associated, at least with the people who are testing positive and get sick in a way we can identify, are scary.
Right.
And
okay.
So it's created a perfect storm.
That's much different. So it was just a perfect timing situation. And as the summer comes, the summer months, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, it'll be really interesting to see if the droplets can sustain, because I know most viruses really prefer that, that cold, dry air when our immune systems are down. So it'll be really interesting to see this summer if we can kind of kick it in the butt.
That's exactly right. And so we'll hope that there's some susceptibility, if you will, of the virus to that. But at this point, that does not look like it's going to disrupt things like we see every year with the flu.
That's interesting. So before I let you go here, can you tell the listeners a few key takeaways about moving forward with this? I want people to be a little less scared, a little less fearful, because the more you know, the better you'll be. Can you just give us a few takeaways as a doctor?
Sure.
Just to help us out.
I'd be happy to do that. And really, I think about, if you think really about four things, and the first is what we were just talking about, and it's a little bit about the history of how we got here. So this virus appeared, and we really had no way to intervene, and so we had to make decisions based on epidemiologic or math models of where this could go. And those models make a prediction from high to low as to how many people might get sick, how many people might die, and the impacts. And those modeling are different for each country, by the way. Mm-hmm. So in the United States, and this was step one, we made the decision based on that modeling and having no way to intervene that we needed to do the things that we've done, like I described for Illinois: social distancing, shut business down, really try and prevent that peak from occurring. The whole reason to prevent the peak is so that the healthcare system, what I do every day, does not get overwhelmed, that there'd be so many cases that we could not manage them. And so that's the step that we're in right now, and we here in the United States have been fairly successful, although stretched in the hot spots. By and large, we have flattened that curve, and so that's a good thing. We should be getting to more predictable numbers. Now, the less positive thing with that is that it's still an infective virus, and so we still will continue to get people infected by this virus, and it will continue over time. It'll just be spread out. So the hospitals will continue to see a constant number of people in their ICUs and in their general medical beds, but not necessarily hundreds coming in, every week or every other week. And so that's step one. Now, what we can expect going forward is, as you said, sort of kick the butt of the virus. Two things would help us with that. Number one is finding a medication that works. And we haven't found that yet, but when we find that, that will be a game changer. The second thing, which goes along, you had mentioned the flu, is if we can develop an immunization. And we're working on that, although with viruses it can be tricky because they mutate. So that treatment and or immunizations will be absolutely critical, but are probably several months away. not the trials, but being 100% convinced we have something.
Right.
And the final thing with all of these viruses is eventually enough people have been exposed to them that you get an immunity in the population. And so even though it's always there and goes along at a low level, by and large, it has burned through most of the population, and you don't have great numbers of people who are at risk like they are on the front end. The problem with that is it can take 12 plus months for it to spread enough to have that kind of immunity.
Right. So we're kind of in that pickle right now where we're social distancing, so we're not getting the immunity that we need to move forward from it, but we need to social distance because we don't know quite what to do.
You hit it exactly. And so that's why the leaders of the country and the states are struggling with how do we begin to increase the exposures, knowing the number of cases will go up, but hopefully will be manageable so that business can open. And, oh, by the way, what social distancing or mask wearing or whatever do we need to make a part of our habits now going forward so that we're able to manage this as we reopen the country? And that's the tricky set of decisions that are in front of the healthcare people and our political leaders as we go forward.
I gotcha. Yeah. Well, I remember one of the last days that Disneyland was open. I was lucky enough to be there over in Anaheim, and I'd never seen so many men washing their hands before in the bathroom. And so I'm hoping this continues because everybody's washing their hands. I think it's a good takeaway there, and preventative measures like that. And for now, I think we do have to keep social distancing, even though us Californians out here probably already have the herd immunity because I think we were exposed to it probably last summer.
Well, and there is a lot of questions about that. When did it really begin, and how many people really are immune that we're not aware of? And so that's part of the hopeful speculation about doing antibody testing and some of the other things, which will be helpful and hopefully will give us some answers. Because the hard part has been how many people really have already been infected that we don't know about.
Right, exactly. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you on again if you'll do us the pleasure of coming on and explaining anything we need to have explained from the comments or direct messages people send us and everything. So thank you, Dr. James Leonard, President and CEO of the Carle Health System in Illinois, and really appreciate your time today.
You bet, Hobart. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Well, that was awesome. There you have it. Dr. James Leonard filling in all the gaps for us on what we should be doing during our pandemic times. LAJ, thanks for stopping by earlier to talk about all things Asia and how things are going over there. I'm going to end with a couple of recommendations and for movies, really, and TV shows that I've been watching to keep you guys busy while you're sitting at home, isolating, doing the right thing. I've really enjoyed on Hulu, Little Fires Everywhere with Reese Witherspoon, new show. It's awesome. If you have Hulu, check it out. On Netflix, obviously the Tiger King documentary. That was amazing. A bunch of hillbillies running around. I do have to warn you, there is some animal cruelty going on in it, which I do not condone. There are accidental firings of guns and a lot of triggers in there. If you're a little on edge right now, maybe not the best thing to watch, but I really enjoyed it. What else we got? Disney Plus released Onward, the movie with Chris Pratt. I really enjoyed that. It's a sad movie, kind of like Up in that kind of like vein. So if you don't want to be sad, don't watch Onward. Frozen 2 was released, that sort of thing. So those are the movies and TV shows that I've been watching. I will be posting a lot more on @HobartOcean on all social media. I've got some cool stuff that I've done video-wise that I'll be posting for you guys and some photos and things like that. And seriously, if you need to talk, if you're lonely, anxious, anything like that, drop a comment anywhere on social media. I'll be sure to see it. You can direct message, if it's private or something like that. But, we covered all the bad stuff today about the pandemic. I didn't even get into the entertainment side of things where so much has been canceled. A lot of my stuff has been postponed. Niall, Bieber, Shania in Vegas. I mean, all these projects have been postponed. It's a sad time, not even getting into the the medical side of things where a lot of people are dying, but there's been a lot of good too that I wanted to remind everybody that this has really slowed us all down, and we've been able to take a minute and look at ourselves and our lives and really focus on what's important and the family time. I mean, this is awesome for a lot of families that they're finally getting to see their kids and seeing them grow up, because I mean, think about how quickly things move nowadays with all the technology. And I mean, everybody's being forced to stay at home, and I know the divorce rate is going up, but seriously, it's great that people are being able to spend time together. The pollution is down. The pollution is way down here in LA. I've been able to see the mountains from my house, which is crazy. I usually cannot see them, but I know the traffic was down about 35% according to Caltrans, or what Caltrans, whatever that is here in California. So I know that the traffic's down, so the pollution is down, and that's been awesome. So hopefully, Elon, if you're listening, keep pushing those electric cars, because I'm really enjoying the clean air, and it's been great in that sense. But overall, if we're just being real with ourselves here, the time has been very mediocre. You know, most of us aren't infected with the disease. Most of us don't have family members infected with the disease. But I know all of us are told to stay home, and, you know, we have to follow all these new precautions and everything. And we're all just waiting. We're all in limbo. And that's really what this has been. It's been right down the middle, that you got to take the good with the bad and keep trucking. That's all I can say. Keep trucking, everybody. Make sure you reach out to me online. Thank you so very much for hanging out with me. Thank you to Dr. James Leonard. Thank you to LAJ. I'll see you when you get back, bud. Everybody be safe. Stay home. Peace.